Good morning to all of you. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, I just want to clear the air here in case any of you are wondering. My mom, part of my graduation, she bought me this shirt. So in case you're wondering, DTS, that's the school that I graduated from, Dallas Theological Seminary. And I told her I was so excited, I was so proud of this shirt. And it was not a cheap shirt. And I said, Mom, I'm going to wear that. Like the first sermon I preach, I'm going to wear that. It's going to be like my prof shirt. So I'm only going to wear it once here. But anyway, that's what's up with the shirt. In Ephesians, we're looking at Ephesians, and the book of Ephesians is like the church constitution. And I was talking to Laura this morning as I was just kind of making my final preparations and clarifying in my mind what God, I think, wants to say to us. And I would say this, if we get Ephesians right, especially chapter 5, then we will probably get the Christian life right. If we understand who Jesus is, right? Ephesians chapter 1, and what Jesus has done, Ephesians chapter 2 and chapter 3, then we will get Ephesians chapter 4, 5, and 6, how to live the Christian life right. And if we get that right, we'll be able to interpret all the other pieces, I think, of Scripture, these books that were letters that were written to various churches. And in chapter 5, verse 1, if you remember, we looked at this a few weeks ago, the Apostle Paul, who was an enemy of the church, right? He was an enemy of the church. He persecuted Christians, and there was blood shed under the guilt of Paul. In other words, there were Christians who died somewhat based on his authority as a hater and persecutor of the church. And he met Jesus powerfully. Jesus blinded him by his glory and his light, spoke to him very clearly, saved the Apostle Paul, and he went on this journey and this unique and special calling to take the good news, the gospel, to people like us who are Gentiles. Right? He went to the Jews first, but he went to the Gentiles. He had a special and unique calling. And this Apostle Paul, he says to the church in chapter 5, verse 1, be imitators of God. As special people, as he says, as dearly loved children, be imitators. Those of us who have been around children, certainly parents, know that children tend to naturally imitate their parents. And I could give you so many examples, especially of Emmett imitating me, doing the goofiest things. Sometimes it's just funny. Sometimes I want him to do it. Sometimes I don't. But children just naturally imitate their parents. Christians who follow Jesus also supernaturally imitate him. And the Apostle Paul is basically saying, his teaching is basically saying, Christians, you have been radically transformed by the gospel. Now imitate God in your life. Right? Imitate God in your life. So this radical transformation that actually happens, we don't necessarily feel it all the time, do we? We've been forgiven, right? We've been forgiven all of the sins that we committed in the past. But do you always feel forgiven? Do you always feel free? Sometimes Satan comes, right? And there's this spirit of lie, these lies that we get tripped up on about our past failures, our past sins, and yet we have truly been forgiven, and our life is hidden with God in Jesus in the heavenly places, but we don't always feel that way, right? So then Paul encourages us. He said, hey, since you've been forgiven, now live this forgiven lifestyle. And so the question is, how do we do that? How do we do that? And that is what chapter 5 is all about. It's the big YBH, the yes, but how, in terms of the Christian life. And so let's read together, starting in verse 7. Chapter 5, starting in verse 7. We'll have it on the screen. I'll read it out loud. Follow along silently. The Apostle Paul says this, therefore, and I believe this is a therefore that is now introducing something new, not looking back. Therefore, do not be partners or sharers with them. We'll look at who the them is in a moment. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. That is why it is said, "Wake up, sleeper." This is good for a Sunday morning. "Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." May God speak so clearly to us. So let's go back and look. The Apostle Paul says, therefore, do not be partners with them. Well, first of all, partner, this word for partner is like partner with. It's a fellow partner. It's often used as business partners, right? So if some of you have had business partners, or you currently have business partners, or you understand that when you're there's a deeper level of relationship when you have a business partner. You don't just walk away from a business partner. You have a mutual interest in that business. And so he's using this word in the context that if we are joined to Jesus, if we're partners, if we're sharers together with Jesus, then we cannot be sharers in the lives of those who are practicing the sins of verses 3 and 4. So who is the therefore? Who is the then that he's talking about? Well, if you have your Bible open, I'll just read it to you. Verse 3, going back, chapter 5, verse 3, "But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, or of any kind of impurity, or of greed. Because of these are improper for God's holy people. Nor shall there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving." So those who practice those things, notice, not those who might struggle with them, but those who practice, those whose lives are characterized by those things. You should not be a sharer. You should not be a partner with that person. 2 Corinthians 6:14 helps. It's not up on the screen, but I'll read it for you. 2 Corinthians 14. This is great for those of you who are considering in the next 10 years dating. I know that none of you would consider that at this stage in your life, but in the next 10 years as you consider it, this is a good one to apply there as well as business and other things. The Apostle Paul, same person who wrote Ephesians, said this: "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers," non-Christians. That doesn't mean don't be friends with, don't have relationships with them. He's saying don't yoke yourself together. Is a business partnership a yoke? Yes, absolutely. Is a dating relationship a yoke? Yeah. And many other examples. He says, "For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship," this is the metaphor he's using, "can light have with darkness?" Right? When there's darkness, there's no light. When there's light, there's no darkness. Right? It was dark, the lights were off, we could kind of see, couldn't really make out if it was this Sarah, or not really sure, it was kind of dark, but then the lights came, oh, that's Sarah, yeah. She came out of the darkness. So this does not mean, if you're sleeping, make sure you catch this, because I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying or what the Apostle Paul said. It doesn't mean to avoid relationships or friendships with such people. Such non-Christian people, okay? Doesn't mean that. We are sent into the world, but we are not to be of the world. We're sent in to have relationships and influences with those kinds of people. We are not from the world, but we are to live for the world. Right? We're not from the world. We have a new identity with Jesus as followers of His. We're not from the world. We're from the kingdom of light, sent into the world, to be for the world, to be for the transformation of the world. So an example of mine is I used to play football with some friends of mine from high school. Right? And I have 3 boys. It's too busy. I can't do it anymore. I'd love to, but I can't. And I had the motivation that I was going to be kind of the pastor, if you will, undercover. Okay? Kind of the undercover pastor. Love them. Was that a yoking? No, I could, at any Saturday, I could just not show up. They may hold it against me, sort of, but they could really care less one way or the other, whether I'm there or not. So I wasn't yoked together with them. Now, Afterwards, often they would go out and have drinks and different things. And while I wanted to go out with them, because it was usually in the afternoon, I rarely ever did because, again, I was having kids during this period of time. I was very busy doing other things as well. However, then once the evening came, the light of day kind of went away and the evening came up, there would be some wild things that would go on. And they would always happen the night before. There would be some wild things going on. And the guys would come, and as we're kind of warming up, they'd be talking about the party last night and different kind of things, Wild stuff. That it would be wrong for me to even mention it, right? According to what Paul said. I mean, unfortunately, I have some vivid memories even of what some of the guys, some of the things they would. I would kind of try to just walk away and not participate in it. So I wasn't participating with them in the dark areas of their lifestyle. I wasn't a partaker with them in those things, but I was a genuine friend. So much so that the guy who was the captain of the team runs a gym in the area. Many of you would pass by it. I don't know if you've ever been there or not. But he and his sister, their stepbrother, passed away of an overdose, a drug overdose. And they called me, I've told the story before, I won't tell it all, but they called me to be in the crematorium with them and to speak at his memorial party at a bar. And there were 150 people came. And I got to clearly articulate the gospel in a bar full of people whose lifestyle would be very dark. And many of them came up to me afterward. Many of them, 2 beers in each hand, talking about how God touched them through something that I shared. And then I left, and God only knows what happened on into the night, right? I wasn't being a partaker or a sharer in those things with them, but I am sent into the world to love them, be genuine friends. And trust me, if something else happens in this family or anyone they know, and they don't know another path, they will call me and I will be there to serve them. My encouragement, this could be controversial, but my encouragement is this, that we live as close to the darkness as we possibly can without being part of it. Right? Paul's not saying avoid the darkness. He's saying avoid partnering with the darkness, right? There's no way for us to avoid the darkness. We must get close to the darkness. Did Jesus get close to the darkness? I mean, he was in it. Now, I don't know that most of us could handle being in the middle of the darkness like Jesus was. I mean, he was tempted by Satan himself, right, in the wilderness. Most of us could not handle that. I would never want to be in that position. But Jesus went into the darkness. And who were the people that were critical of that? It wasn't the people that were in the dark that were complaining about Jesus sharing the gospel with them. It was the religious leaders that was complaining. What are you doing in the house of sinners? What kind of sinners were there? Like thieving tax collectors and prostitutes? And who knows what other kind of dirty, kind of dark people were there? One story where this woman was literally wiping her feet, weeping at Jesus' feet and wiping his feet with her hair. That's about as close to the darkness as you can get, right? So my suggestion is this, that we get as close to the darkness as possible without being part of it. Now, here's the caveat. It's a tension, okay? It's a tension. It's not, Jeff may have a certain experience, Guo has a certain experience, Kevin, Sarah, June, Mimi, JC, and Amber. We all have different ways, different thresholds of how much darkness we can handle. And it's not Lone Ranger, right? It's not that I go alone into the darkness and you go alone. And we get as close as we can alone and nobody else knows where we're kind of secret Christians. No. We go together. We go as a community as much as possible. Or at least as with partners, right? It's very dangerous to go alone. And so I just want you to understand the context of what I'm trying to say. Now, why is Paul saying don't be sharers or partakers? Why is he saying that? Do you have it back there? There you go. All right, so why? Why are we not to be partakers with those who practice darkness? Well, verse 8, because for you were once darkness, But now you are children. Now you are light in the Lord. Some reason that got cut off. Now you are light in the Lord. Okay? So your new identity is Jessica, person of the light. You know? I am now Iris, person of the light. Hello. It's very nice to meet you, Christine. I'm Ed, person of the light. That's our new identity as Christian. Now I'm a person of the light. So as a person of the light, it doesn't make any sense. I used to be a person of the darkness, so now I'm separate from that. I shouldn't have a partnership with the darkness. We imitate God, our Heavenly Father, because we have a new identity with Him. We are now light, where we used to be darkness. Children of darkness are motivated by what? Darkness. Right? We shouldn't expect anything otherwise, right? Children of darkness are motivated by darkness. Children of the light are motivated by light, right? I used to be motivated by darkness. I was sharing with one brother last night. We were talking about girls. Go figure. And I shared, I'll just be open with you, okay? There are guys in the darkness who have this kind of motivation. And I was in the darkness until I was 20. Okay, so I went through that whole crazy season of life in the darkness. And I was motivated. I had some genuine friends who were girls. Laura has met several of them, been in our home, right? And as far as I'm concerned, they're not really a friend of mine, they're a friend of ours. I would never meet with them. You know, I wouldn't go hang out with some friend who's a girl without Laura. I would never do that. However, and there was some genuine friendship there, but I have to say that there was a piece of me, I knew that this girl has friends who are girls, who have friends that are girls, and the likelihood if I'm good friends with her, being introduced to these other girls, and then I'll know lots of girls. You see what I'm saying? So I was motivated, I was a child of darkness, being motivated by darkness. That wasn't a motivation that was to help more girls. You know, I always consider myself a pretty good guy. It didn't hurt, it wasn't like a trail of tears other than hearts that were broken, but my heart got broken through that too. Your friends and your family and the people that are around you who are living in darkness, expect them to be motivated by darkness. Don't be shocked by the fact that they're motivated by things like greed and lust and power and fill in the blank. Now there's an obvious contrast between darkness and light, right? Before we look at the Apostles' positive encouragement, check out how he expands on the idea of avoiding darkness. So skip forward, this is verse 8, skip forward to verse 11. And this is what he says. He has a little parenthetical thought we'll come back to in just a minute. But starting in verse 11. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes light. I'll explain what that's saying. This is why it is said, wake up. So notice Paul does not just say avoid the darkness. If it did, it would be a little easier to accept, right? We could all kind of say amen. You know, should we avoid participating in, wild things, in stealing things, in just living for power, and different things, right? We could kind of say, yes, okay, I understand that as Christians we're supposed to avoid that. But that's not what he says. We're not just to avoid it, but also to confront it. This is where it gets difficult to be a follower of Jesus. This is where the cross is very important, right? What did Jesus say? If you want to come after me, you want to be a Christian, you want to come after me, you take up your cross, for whoever saves their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for my sake in the gospel will save it. This is where it gets tricky. The word expose, right? Do you see that? So don't just have nothing to do with it, but expose them. Have you ever been exposed? I just pray that my neighbors have never noticed. But there have been some times I come out of the bathroom and our townhouse backs up to another townhouse. You know, and I don't think I've ever been like totally without clothes, but you know, like I come out and I'll be like in my underwear, you know. And then I look over and like the window's open. I'm like, ah, you know, and I can't see, like I can't tell if anyone's over there now. Like I hope they've never seen me. I have noticed when I've been jogging around the neighborhood, those people aren't very friendly to me. I don't know why. They might think I'm nuts. I have no idea. But have you ever been exposed? Like it's shameful. I mean, there's a shame kind of feeling, like yeah, you know. The word expose, however, here has the idea of correcting or convincing someone. Now, this is not, let's clarify this is not talking about confronting non-Christians about their non-Christian lifestyle. You don't go to your friends who are living in darkness because they are children of darkness and say, hey, you should stop living like you're in the darkness. That's when they might look at you like you have three heads. Like, you judgmental, Pharisee. Like, what's that? Like, what kind of message is that? No one wants to hear that. That wasn't Jesus' message. Paul is calling the church to take sin seriously. This is echoed all throughout the New Testament, right? Jesus began in Matthew 18. If your brother, sins and you observe that he's sinning, what do? You go and you gently, lovingly admonish him. You confront that sin. And if he doesn't listen to you, then you take a few other people with you and you go and then you say, hey man, we've noticed, not man, sorry for ladies, we've noticed this pattern, this thing that's in your life or whatever, we want to help you, and that person says, no, I don't know what you're talking about, or I'm not interested, then at that point you bring it in front of the church, and if they still don't turn, then you treat them, you don't boot them out like, get out of here, we don't want to have anything to do with you. You remove the protection of the church, and now you begin to treat them like they're not a Christian, like they are children of the darkness, and now my relationship changes with them. In Galatians chapter 6, I miswrote that down. Paul says, if you see a brother or a sister who is caught in sin, basically, you go to them and you gently reprove them, being careful that you judge yourself first, lest you fall into the temptation. In 1 Corinthians 14, Paul talks about the weaker brother and the stronger brother and confronting issues there. 1 Timothy 5, talking about leadership and elders. There's a very strong confrontation when there's an elder that's caught in sin, where it's to be brought publicly in front of everybody. So we are all instructed to confront sin, but for the Pharisees in us, we are always to do it motivated to help a brother or sister experience change and transformation. It's never to catch somebody like, they're like a worse off person, like they're a bad person. No, they're not worse than me. I'm motivated to help that person to experience the gospel. How do we experience the gospel and transformation? We do it in relationship with one another. When you confront me, I confront you. We have this mutual thing going on where we're motivated to help transformation or to unleash their potential in Jesus. So you have some potential, but there's some struggles that you can't see, someone else can see. They come along and they say, hey, Iris, how's that going? Like, I don't see this, see this kind of pattern, in your life, and I really want you to be all with Jesus. And then Iris can say, wow, yeah, you're right. Would you walk alongside me as I struggle to grow through this? And now there's some good pressure in Iris's life to act on her faith, right? Verse 13. So then he says it's even shameful to mention what the disobedient do in secret. I mean, we shouldn't even be like joking. One of the things I heard a couple years ago is how Christians, and I've been guilty of this too, we entertain ourselves by watching people sin. So, like Laura and I, one of the core values in the Choi family is fun. Like, we don't have a whole lot of stuff. And I've always, even growing up, I've always had kind of a, like, you know, I like going to a theme park, but like, if it was my parents and I was a teenager and it was like, spend $100 or like, give me $100, like, give me $100, 10 out of 10 days, you know. And I'll go and I'll use that and I'll find awesome deals, you know, and I will make that $100 go, man. Like, I'm a freak when it comes to awesome deals. That's why Hong and I are such good friends. Hong is like the deal master. Thank you, Hong. Can you watch this? So we like to have fun, but it's usually important that we have fun that's very simple kind of fun. So we get like goofy and silly and all that kind of stuff. But Laura and I also like to watch movies, right? We love to watch movies. Anybody like to just love watching good movies, good stories, right? Okay, a few of you. Yeah, I mean, aren't great movies are all great stories, right? You know, just the story, and even like true stories, things that are based on true stories, can just move you so deeply, can't it? And I always go, we usually do the red box, you know, I know that's kind of, but anyway, so it's like order or whatever. But so, you know, and I'm looking for like comedy. Like what good, clean comedy movie exists in the last 10 years? You know, it's like Hangover 2, you know, or whatever, you know, I don't even know, like, I don't even want to read the stuff, like, they're all R-rated, and then I look at it, and it's like, I don't want to watch that, you know, I mean, it might be funny if I did watch it, but then I'm just laughing at, like, fornication, and, like, sexual immorality, and people's total just giving over to sin, and I don't want to be entertained by that. So it's difficult. So our standby at home is Tim Hawkins. And so if we can't find a good, funny movie, we just throw a little Tim Hawkins and we will be rolling. But that's one of the reasons why we love Duck Dynasty. So this is kind of neat. Yesterday, so I'm a big Twitter fan, right? So anybody on Twitter, follow me, I follow you back, you know, I love Twitter. And I've met tons of people in person that I met on Twitter. Tons of people. People that changed my life. And just yesterday, I connected with two pastors, both of them that have a significant platform, okay? Two pastors in Louisiana, in the same area where Duck Dynasty is. And so this one guy, so I connected with this guy, so I was telling Jeff yesterday, he wrote this blog, or no, he has a podcast. And I listened to his podcast yesterday morning, and it just kind of inspired me. It was about like how to have a really good weekend. You know, like go figure, who has a podcast about that? But he has his podcast like how to have how to have an awesome weekend. You know, it's like, you know, how to do something that's really meaningful and, you know, plan it out and all this kind of stuff. And so on Twitter, you know, so I shared his thing and said, hey, this is really great, thank you. And then another guy followed me and had some interaction. He's like, oh, I'm glad you found some Monroe, Louisiana, I think is where they're from. So then the other guy writes me back and he says, yeah, man, he says, I see you're connected with this guy, man. You better get your fishing shirt ready. And he said, you know, something about Louisiana culture, whatever. And we went back and forth and said, oh, yeah, that sounds great. I love it, you know. And I said, yeah, you know, I love that. And some Duck Dynasty, you know. And the guy writes me back and he said, Ed, if you come down, like, I'll try to work it out where you can meet him. It's like, yeah, that's awesome, you know? Willie, if you're watching this. Really, I want to meet Cy. Cy's kind of the hero of our Emmett loves Cy. Some of you are like, what is he talking about? Don't worry. The point is that it is hard to have fun in a way that's clean, right? It's hard to be entertained in a way that's clean. And so Paul's saying, don't expose yourself to the things that people do in secret, that's dark in secret. That's not appropriate for the people of the light. It's the antithesis. It's the opposite of keeping something secret. He says, in verse 13, then he says, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes light. The idea of becoming visible or become light is literally to make known or to reveal. Everything that is made known by the light becomes visible. And everything that is illuminated, everything that is revealed becomes light. So those of us who get it, we have the light. We become the light. We are the light. We are the antithesis of the darkness. The idea is both negative and transformative, right? It's negative. We are to expose sin, right? But it's also transformative, becoming light. And there's a process that's very important, and I hope you will catch it. We need to carry both of these in tension. Now, do you understand this is not an experience you can have alone? This is not an experience you can have as an individual.